This is awkward. Because, as it turns out, TVR are in fact not dead. Meaning that the first video to get this channel any kind of success is now all built on lies. However, I would actually recommend watching that video first, where I cover the story up until earlier this year. But if you can't be bothered, I will just give a quick speedrun of the important contextual points before we get into the new developments, new owners, and why, like a house cat that's been lobbed out of a window 8 times, this might be TVR's very last chance. So, in 2013, TVR were taken over by a consortium led by Les Edgar. In 2017, they revealed the Griffith, the first new TVR in over a decade at that point. The looks were divisive, but the spec sheet was promising. 5-litre Cosworth V8 manual gearbox, lightweight carbon fibre chassis with some Gordon Murray wizardry, and a price tag aiming it squarely at the likes of the Porsche 911. The car was supposed to be on sale by 2019 and was to be produced in a new factory in South Wales. Trouble was, come the end of 2018, the factory was still not ready, and when it finally was, the Welsh government wouldn't hand the keys to TVR because the company owed them a few million quid from a loan a few years prior. The debt was eventually paid thanks to new investment, but in the end the factory was put back up for sale in 2023, and since then it's essentially been crickets, aside from the news of their CEO resigning early last year, and the news of them losing the rights to that Gordon Murray chassis. So all of that brings us to the present day, and Charge Holdings, who have agreed to make TVR a subsidiary of their company. Now their main business is Charge Cars, who are responsible for this very nice looking Mustang resto mod. However, as you may have guessed from their name, that isn't just any Mustang resto mod, it's an electric one. Now before everyone gets up in arms, while their plan is to take TVR electric in the future, as was also planned by Insorcia Metals, the previous investors, the first thing on the agenda is getting an internal combustion version of the Griffith to market, which means they actually have to survive that before we start worrying about the prospect of an electric TVR. Details are thin on the ground right now, but it's expected it won't be the original V8 planned by the previous iteration of the company. Ironically, that was a breathed on version of the Coyote V8 from a modern Ford Mustang. We also don't know where they plan to produce the car, either. Charge Cars are currently based in West Drayton on the outskirts of London, where the EV Mustang was built using a body officially licensed by Ford. Actually, when I say built, 500 units were planned by Charge Cars, but as for how many they've sold, that would be a big fat 0. You see, Charge Holdings have had their own difficulties, let's say. They themselves had gone bust as recently as the middle of last year, and had to make all of their 50 or so staff redundant. Not exactly confidence inspiring, but in fairness, by January of 2025 they had been brought back with a new CEO. Now they plan a multi-phased restructuring of TVR, but since I don't know what that means, let's talk about the prospect of an electric TVR, because quite frankly, that's kind of dumb. And that's coming from someone who, as far as car enthusiasts go, I'm an evangelist. I'm a pretty staunch defender of electric vehicles, when they make sense, but here, it really doesn't. TVRs are first and foremost two things: light and loud, or in other words, the complete antithesis of electric cars. In fact, the only thing EVs have in common with TVRs is their propensity to catch fire with next to no warning. And actually, that's not even fair on EVs. Speaking in a business sense though, even the major players in the market are getting cold feet about their upcoming performance electric cars. Ferrari and Porsche have both delayed theirs, while Maserati cancelled the electric MC20 altogether. So to think that a relative startup can take TVR to that place, it's ambitious, I'll give them that. Of course I want TVR to succeed, but I have my doubts. Charge Holdings say their plan is to create a multi-brand, low-volume integrated automotive group. And I think the low-volume part of that is the most crucial. That's not to say it's their golden ticket, because the previous iteration of the company had pretty modest production targets for the Griffith, but we all know how that went now. But personally, I think their best bet is to go the way of, say, modern Di Tommaso, having an ultra-exclusive, handcrafted, boutique kind of vibe, but retaining those big naturally aspirated engines and manual gearboxes. Because realistically, this new TVR ain't going to be cheap regardless. Long gone are the days where a TVR was the mad underdog that could embarrass cars costing 3 times as much. I mean, if we look to Charge Car's Mustang Resto mod for instance, that's £350,000. But the crux of the issue is that TVR need to double down on their individuality to get anywhere. Perhaps helping with that though could be the third prong of the Charge Holdings empire, Lab 364, who are a specialist paint shop. Let's get some of those mad TVR colours back at least. Minus the cyanide in the paint this time. But of course, I'm not heeding my own warning from the start of the video and I'm getting way ahead of myself. This new version of TVR need to get the foundations out first, and right now, that seems to be as big of a question mark as ever. More news is to follow early next year, but let me know how high your hopes are, and if I'm a massive idiot, I guess. Thanks for watching.